One thing I mentioned earlier was the procedural creation of the lip controls, and these have all been created, weighted, and placed procedurally. In the last video, I had quite a bit, like a lot fewer controls. You see, this is still gonna deform in the same way, um, but in between here, you almost have a subdivision of controls where you're gonna have a more broad version and then much more tiny one. And you'll see here, like, the more controls you have, if you don't have a good amount of geometry and you keep adding controls, you're not going to get great results. You're going to have some, like, polling and waviness and stuff like that. But this is just to show how easy it is to change the number of controls and add controls in and things like that. Also, this is procedural. I just give it a number, and it figures out the side, the name, the color, everything else. But if you want, you can actually add in, say I just wanted this, like a mouth corner, for example, and you just give it a dictionary, say I want a control called mouth corner, and then you would get a corner control here, and you could actually add in either curve weights or hand weights or whatever you want. This automation is mostly for the lip because the lip is usually the most complicated out of all of the face components. There's also curl. There's curl. There's thick in there, and you really need to be able to have each one of these individual controls take a portion of that deformation and be able to split it up so it's isolated. The curve here can be animated in just one very small area, so you can do things like ooze and then just curl that one thing. Now, of course, the deformation isn't set up very well. Please forgive the crudeness of the shapes and the things you're saying, but think of this as a very broad explanation of the functionality of the rig. An artist would then take this and they'd go in and go crazy and make an extremely beautiful face rig using these tools. I also wanted to talk about how you can see here this control drives the rest of the other controls and they follow along, and so you never have to worry about losing a control. This control is also driving that control drives all the other surrounding controls, and this is achieved through having the controls be in local space. You won't get any cycles because you're actually using the geometry to drive the controls, and the controls are driving the geometry through local space, not global space. And I've written a plugin for actually riveting these controls to the surface. And while you're working, you can rivet the controls to the lip. Say you're just working on the lip, you rivet the controls to that. But in the end, when you're ready to publish, give it to animation, you rivet the controls to the full body, and you can bake out your you can bake out your guides. So right now everything is live with the guides. I'm just going to bake it out really quick. Then you have your you'll have your body rig. All of this is blend shaped in, and you can actually go in and you have everything working, and your animation's still happening. You have global scale. Excuse me. You have global scale, and the controls all follow along. They'll still follow along with the geometry. And the cool thing about this is all of these sliding controls are sliding based on UVs. So the NURBS curve that is you're finding the UVs from, it's not based on world space, it's based on the UVs of the NURBS patch. So if I take this model and I shrink it down to a tiny little model, you're still going to get the same deformation and the same range of deformation as you would if it was like 1,000,000 feet tall. And the same can go. This can actually really help with retargeting animation to different characters that are very different sizes, where you can see poses that you would think would never transfer to another character. These poses are actually transferring very well, and that's because they're transferring in UV space rather than world space.